hopefully he'll
Yeah,
sign on.
so I think,
So,
you know, hopefully everybody gets on by the time we just start discussing the applications, but I can get started. Anyway, so just calling the meeting to order. Let's just go ahead and go around the table once again. I'm Rob Levash, Chair of the CPC.
Jenny Russell, Vice Chair.
Peter Jackson, member.
I'm Callahan, member representing the Affordable Housing Trust.
Joe Duffy, Milton Housing Authority.
Linda Weld, Historic Commission.
And Wendy.
And I'm Wendy Garpo with the Conservation Commission.
All right, so we'll Rich and Tom will join us in a bit, hopefully. All right, so I just want to.
Ted.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Rich and Ted. The next meeting date that we discussed last time was March 15th. So it's a little less than a month away. It'll be here, 7 p.m. And okay, so Rich is in. So at that time, hopefully we can discuss the articles and we can also discuss a little bit of feedback on you know, how things are going and kind of the future, you know, funding for the next round and all that stuff. But the main purpose of it will be to draft the articles and figure that all out.
And we determined that's not too late for the.
We should be okay. Yeah, like we should be fine. Maybe we'll see how it goes tonight and then.
Is the idea to have them in a draft form by that meeting for the
Yeah.
committee to approve?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, but
we pretty much have them, so we.
But the issue is, what's the final date to get them in,
Right,
in order to be printed in the warrant?
right.
So
So it may have to be before then. If it is, I'll check. I'll check
what's
this
the
week.
date? Do we have a date for the annual town meeting?
Yeah,
Is it May
it's always the first.
first?
Well, it was late last time, it was June.
It's definitely.
I don't think it's gonna be late this year.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that had to do with some things they wanted to get in, and they weren't ready.
It should be May 1st.
May first.
I
That's,
didn't
I
see it
mean,
on the website and I was
really?
No.
It's just,
If it's May first, that's probably.
I mean, that's the traditional day because the
Yeah.
election would be the 25th.
Yeah,
Right.
usually it's the first month in May.
All right, meeting minutes approval. I know, did you go, I think you made some edits, Jenny. Did everyone get to see the minutes from last meeting? I haven't printed that out too. If everyone's good with those, can I get a motion to
Well, I haven't
the
seen
minutes? You haven't seen.
them with any edits.
I just, my suggestion was to take out the last sentence of the last description.
Right, for the Affordable Housing Trust, and Julia did.
That, yeah.
And then I had one about the date that the next funding applications are for 2024, the new ones. This year is 2023, this year's projects are 2023, and next year's are 2024. And it's on the, like, the second paragraph in there
Okay,
that has the March date for 2024 applications, it says 2023.
do you see it? Do you wanna mark that, and then if we're good with it? Is that,
Acceptance of 2024.
and then Julia will make the change?
Yeah.
Are we good then?
I move
Yeah,
to
good.
accept it as amended.
Yeah,
He just marked it, and so
Okay.
well, and then I'll.
after, in case there's anything
All
else.
right,
All right, I'll reprint that one.
all right, so all those in favor, she seconded it.
I made a motion.
You made the motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Yeah.
I'll abstain.
Hi,
Aye.
Rich and Wendy.
Aye.
Wendy,
okay, we're good.
okay, good. All right. So, on to the schedule. Come on. So. the
Rob, if
schedule
I
is-
could just interrupt for a second, my
Yeah.
apologies. Richard and I are only able to see what's on the screen.
Yeah,
And,
Is the owl present tonight?
It is, but because we're sharing the screen.
Yeah.
I could stop sharing it, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
so I think it's probably just prefacing the presentation.
got it.
'Cause
Okay.
You probably can't see both.
Can't see anybody with those two.
You might be able to,
So,
hold on one second. Oh. Here you go. Can you see us now?
Oh, I can, yes.
Okay. All right,
Thank
good.
you.
Sorry about that. I get too many computers in front of me. All right, so this is a schedule from tonight on February 22nd, and it's looking towards the January 2024. So the year from basically the next funding round. And so I'd shown you this a couple meetings ago. And what I proposed was to open eligibility applications March 1st, which is just around the corner. Basically, it would give March, April, May, 3 months to get eligibility applications in. We would do similar, reviews. I think it's been working pretty well, but I'm welcome to hear feedback if you guys think it's work. But we basically would have 3 months for eligibility. We would have June. We would basically have June to review it. June and July, we would have to review it. August 1st would be when the funding applications open. And then we would have the funding applications due November 1st. So like that basically backs us up 2 months, and it was on purpose, we're kind of late getting to the town meeting.
yeah.
So what I wanted to do was roll that back so that we can actually get it done earlier this year, but it gives a little bit more time built in for the funding applications. But I don't know, I think, we definitely need to build some time into review, and so if everyone's okay with the schedule, we'll leave it up right now as a draft. I think March 15th, when we have our meeting, we can review again to kind of approve it. Actually, we do need to say, I think if we're gonna open eligibility for this round, then we're gonna need to decide tonight. So if we're all good with that.
So let's just, just to be clear, it just means that, I know I appreciate the amount of time that you have allowed for the applications, but let's just also review the amount of time this committee has to review the applications. So for the eligibility applications, you've got 2 months. And then for the full applications, you have how many months?
We'll still have 2 months because they'll be due November 1st. So we'll have November, December to review, and then hopefully by the end of the year, we'll draft the articles in January. So it's kind of building 2 months of review
For each stage.
for each stage.
That November, December stage is full of other things going on.
It is. It is, but
I don't know how you remedy it, but just
Yeah.
a heads up that that's full of other things going on.
yeah, I think
I think we could spill over into, I think we could build in, not spill over accidentally, but
Right.
we could build in the month of January to make final
Yeah.
recommendations.
That's still ahead of where
And
we are
still,
now.
and be still ahead of where we are, I think, still in decent shape. For delivering everything, delivering things to. The select board and warrant committee and stuff.
Yeah, if it was like the second week in November before Thanksgiving and everything, we had one review then. And then like early December, so that we can like go around the holidays, and maybe by January we would vote, and
Yeah.
we'd be way better than where we were now.
Yeah,
And also, I don't know, that I'm sure everyone's tired. It's just the third week now that we've met. So I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible.
so
But-
I'll move that we accept this as the schedule for the next round.
Second.
I would second.
All
And I
right.
would just say, I appreciate you doing this, Robin, and I think it's important for us to try to maintain some consistency going forward. Obviously, we won't always be on it, there'll be other people in these seats over the years, but I think it'd be good for people around town, both citizens and town boards to sort of, oh yeah, they open up in March,
Right.
over time, that they would get used to the cycle. I know that's happened in other communities around the state, and so if we can keep some, try to keep some consistency to the schedule, and that would be good.
Yeah, I agree, certainly, and also with the transparency, but just to be clear, so the January articles and motions, that would be for the warrant committee, the same time as it is now, so it would still be a May or June meeting?
Right. But we're really late right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
it would be
We
building.
could do it a
It gives
month
us a
earlier.
little bit, it gives us a little bit, yeah,
Well,
it gives us a little bit of flex, so I think if we did meet in January, we would be done, and then we can draft that. All right, so all those in favor of the schedule, Wendy and Rich,
Aye.
I,
right?
Thank you for doing this, Rob.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
So that will go up on the website, right?
yeah, so Julia, we can post this schedule for 2023, the CPC schedule, we can post this now on the
Okay.
website.
Do you have it separate from the PowerPoint?
I can, I'll make it tonight and I'll give it to you. And then as well as, I think we're gonna need a notice for March 1st for eligibility applications to reopen again. And we would just post the eligibility application once we. So we will probably have to check that, just to make sure that it's updated, like it has the right year and whatever. All right, so just reviewing again where our budget was for fiscal year 2023 CPC projects. So the total available funds is around 1.761 million. And the kind of breakdown is the 51.4 for the administrative funds, the 180, I think it's 182. Now I get it. It's about 182 for community housing, historic preservation, open space and recreation. That's the 10%, and then about 1.2 for the budgeted reserves. And then as we go towards next year, one thing I do want to talk about maybe at the next meeting is to discuss those administrative funds. If it's a lot of money, and the only thing that our administrative funds are paying for is Julia's time. And if we do get legal counsel, but it's like 52K, so we should probably discuss that in the future.
Well,
And dues.
I think that's kind of.
Oh,
a
dues too, but yeah, but
I
it's
don't know what they're.
But that's kind of
It's
set
30,
by the state, isn't it? the 5%?
3,500, so
You can choose to do, that's the max.
Yeah.
that's the max, so we could.
Less, there are some committees that don't vote in.
Right, yeah, no, a lot of.
I think we do want it, it's a big reserve, we can keep adding the reserve, I mean, it's fine.
Well, we
it'll
don't
still be
add,
used.
at the end of the year, whatever's not spent in
We'll
that
get that.
year goes into the, budget reserves.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason, I mean, in sort of in Plymouth, that it was high because we did a lot of acquisitions. And so you would use those administrative funds to pay for appraisals, to pay for surveys, all that sort of thing, if you forgot to fold them into the warrant article for the vote. So they were available for those kinds of things. And I think you should see, over time, I don't think, we don't have a list of properties that we're gonna be buying,
Right,
so much.
Hope we do.
So you might find that,
Hope we find some.
you don't need that much.
okay. So
I'd suggest maybe we keep it for another year,
it
just
now.
to see how it goes, and if it's a pattern, because we don't lose anything.
right.
on,
All right,
on the topic of administrative funds,
We
I would like
lost-
us to discuss if we could, Rob. Oh, no, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
No, we
You
can
guys
hear
hear
you
me?
now, I thought you were
Okay.
just coming.
Okay, great. I would love if we could discuss the possibility of officially hiring Kathleen O'Donnell for consulting with us. She's, she provides counseling to Plymouth CPC, I believe couple of others. I'm grateful that she's been here to consult with us as a volunteer in our community. But I feel like it would be the right thing to do would be to compensate her for her expertise.
Yeah, so one thing and I'm assuming this is your proposal. So Kathleen what I did ask her for.
No,
when
actually, it's not. It's not.
It's not what?
That's not my
Explain
proposal.
that she gave you that.
Oh, so Kathleen gave me a folder tonight because I asked her for a proposal for legal counsel for 3 projects that we will need counsel for. And so I just got it tonight, and I think we'll wait till next meeting to discuss it officially, and I'll send it out to everybody. But that's one way that I would like to compensate Kathleen for work as a,
Absolutely.
she's obviously well versed and trained on this stuff, and that's one way I think that we can. I would like to put forward to the committee to hire her to
Absolutely.
be
Agreed,
the lawyer to do, and I think the 3 projects would be Forbes House if we approve it, Spalding, I think we said, and then what was the third one?
Oh, potentially affordable housing. trust.
And potentially the affordable housing trust. So those are like the 3 complicated ones, and the rest, because they're between town,
Mhm.
is a little bit easier. So
It's a proposal to work on it. I mean, I know the grant agreements,
the grant
which are
agreements,
important.
Yeah.
yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Get right. Yeah.
But Wendy, when you
Absolutely.
say-
But
Wendy, when you say
also,
Kathy is retainer, right?
in addition to the possibility of Kathleen working on those 3 projects, though, I think that her expertise is invaluable in our regular meetings. I mean, I've been very grateful to have her here
I
with us
agree.
so that we can sit with her as we need to. I'm so frustrated.
Sorry. No, I agree. I think it's a sticky, subject, I think, because Kathleen was on the board and now she's been here, and
But we should certainly explore it.
I think we
she's-
should explore it and
She's
see.
already.
That's what I was,
Pitfalls.
yeah. I was gonna suggest whether we put her, like, it did have like a retainer. And so I think, let's discuss it next meeting, more officially to figure out what we wanna do.
No, I won't be there, so you can have the discussion.
But
And maybe find out if there's any,
Well, the other thing, we just
Difficult,
want to hear
but-
from you, Kathleen, in terms of your preference of, would you, we don't have to do this now, but just in terms of thinking about your involvement with this, do you want to do it project by project or on a regular?
Well, most of the time when I represent Affordable Housing Trust and when I represented Plymouth and all these other ones, I did it by project. Basically, there wasn't really a need for a retainer, and there's a lot of times I would just do work and I wouldn't bill for it, it's just kind of like, whatever, but you have a purchase and sale agreement, or you have a grant agreement. So it's
Yeah,
not-
legal documents, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a problem.
Alright,
The only other comment I would make on your table, Rob, is where you've got the 10% is 106,300. What we got approved by town meeting was 103,000 for
okay,
each of those.
okay,
We had rounded things off.
okay. All right,
Okay.
so where we are tonight and where we met the last 2 meetings was the 11 projects that are in front of us. And the way I've always color coded it was blue for affordable housing, or the 3 in kind of purple is the historic preservation project. So that's the Forbes House, the town lockup, the Spalding Garden masonry stabilization. And then rounding out is there's 7 projects that's open space and recreation. Pretty much these are all recreation. There's no open space, but so that's the Turner's Pond Path Improvement, the Milton's Farmers Market, Pepperly Playground, Pope's Bond pedestrian bridge, the Milton American baseball, Milton pickleball courts, and then lastly, it's Upper Guile LED lighting upgrades.
Lower, middle. Guy.
Oh, Middle Guile, yeah.
Middle guy.
So if you add up all the CPA funding requested by these applicants, where it's a roughly 1.663. So the delta and the difference between our budget and what these projects are is around 100,000. It's a little over 100,000 that we would be in the positive. And then the total project cost through all these, it's about 21 million, but that's kind of funny math because, you know, it throws in the Affordable Housing Trust with a, you know,
Yeah,
19.9 and whatever else. So some of these projects have additional funding, some of them don't. All of that in our, you know, the scoring tracking system, I know I've received a lot of feedback on it. And so I think we can definitely improve the scoring tracking system. I think it's like some of it was, if it wasn't applicable in some of the scoring tracking, what I would have done, and what I did was when I reviewed it, was I just gave it a 3. It's kind of neutral. So it's not going to affect it one way or the other. So I'll go to so everybody filled out the scoring cards. And so I think looking at the overall scoring sheets, perhaps some of the questions are more geared, you know, what was helping out some of the open space or recreation. But I think if you look at these scores, you know, some of the ones that are near the bottom scored a lot lower than the ones at the top. So I think it's just good to see that everyone, you know, see what the scores are. This is out of a possible 60 points. So every question, I think there was 12 questions, had 5 points on it. And so if some things were not applicable, I would have just gave it a 3. So I think going forward, that's what we would do. And then I agree with you. I think like 2 questions that could be problematic was, for instance, if it was a blended project, if it was a 3, it wouldn't really affect it either way. But if it was a 5, then I could see that being more weighted, like 3 to 5. And so no one really should rank it a 1 or 2. And then the other, what was the other question?
Whether it was listed in the plan.
Whether it was listed in the plan. I guess 6 similarly, if it's 3 or 5, I think if it was in the plan, it's a good thing. If it's not, you know, I would kind of make it more neutral. I don't think that one as well, you know, is going to affect things one way or the other. But other things like whether there's project funding, I think is a positive. If a project came and it's totally looking for CPA funds and didn't have funding, I think it's valuable if some of these projects came and had outside funding. So in any case, any questions or comments regarding the kind of, you know, the score and what you see on the screen?
Well, sort of, what do we do with it now?
So what I would like to do, is similar to what we did last time. I think at this point, I would like to go through every project from 1 through 11. I'd like to take the top first, and we're gonna go through and we're gonna review every project. But I think, because it should be easier, I would hope, but I think in the discussion too, what's really gonna be important is whether we recommend or not recommend a project is what we're gonna be voting on. But as well, if there's any conditions or things that we want to put in the letters, then we should discuss that.
so I don't think we have to describe the projects per se. I just,
Right.
you know, this, you know, do we want to fund it or not fund it? Do we want to fund the full amount or partial and any conditions? That'll get us through a lot faster, I think.
Right.
I do think, you know, just following up on what you said about neutral, I think, you know, next year, if we use this kind of system, I think it'd be nice to explain, have 3 being neutral, so that 2 and 1 would be toward the negative side, you know, or expand the number range or something, but I'm sure there's a lot of room for people to interpret themselves on how they're gonna apply these numbers.
I
Okay,
agree. And I would think, you know, if my own take on this, and it was an experiment, I look at it,
yeah,
and I see two projects that are scoring 36 and 34. I would want to speak about those because comparatively, everything else ranked pretty high. And, you know, I look at this too, and I see the historic preservation projects, are they getting knocked a little bit because like, you know, they may not be totally environmentally sustainable because they're historic preservation, that may be a reason why they might be a little bit lower. So, but I don't think they're bad scores, they're still, you know, some of them are still a little bit up there. So, I don't know. If you
So
know.
I'm happy to leave while you guys decide which one to do
Okay.
at Turner's Pond.
Yeah.
So Turner's Pond path improvements, does anybody want to discuss?
No,
It's scored close to a 58, so pretty close to.
yeah, perfect score.
Yeah,
It's pretty close to a perfect.
I mean, the budget's reasonable,
Yeah, everything
it's
is, yeah,
scored high, we should fund it.
we should fund it as
And
proposed,
fully fund it.
yeah, I agree. No question.
Yeah.
I agree. Any comments from Wendy or Rich?
Nope, I'm in agreement.
All right, so I'm gonna,
We take a vote on each one,
we're
or?
gonna vote on each one.
Okay,
We should just vote on each
yeah,
one.
yeah, fair. So
So,
I would move to approve, full funding of the Turner's Pond path improvement.
A second,
all right, I'm just gonna do a roll call because it's just
Okay.
easier. Linda,
Yes,
Yes,
Tom,
Yes,
yes,
Wendy?
Yes.
Rich
Yes.
and myself, yes.
Yes.
All right.
so fast.
That one was easy.
I figured you'd be, I think most of them will be pretty easy.
Yeah,
There'll
that's
be
good.
some.
I don't know.
suggestion, on the next motion, we name the amount, dollar amount.
that was 75,000.
75.
Yeah.
Out of the total.
That's a good.
So does someone have that list up, or Julia, do you have that list up so that we can, I don't have to flip back and forth?
Yeah.
The Pope's Pond pedestrian bridge is next on the, is next up, and that is for,
125.
125,000.
Yeah.
Any discussion on that project? Any comments,
I feel
feedback?
similarly about that project.
Okay,
I think that, obviously it's scored highly, I think it has. There's a fair amount of enthusiasm about that project, it's a good project to connect with the. Make that walking path an even more, town resource for more folks, so.
and what did you
support
get
that.
for total score?
it got,
There was a second.
54.
And there's money coming from the town of 100, so that's impressive.
Right.
Yeah,
So it's gonna get done, it's kind of the message, which is great,
Yeah.
it's good to see that,
Right.
as the message
It's
that
almost funded.
it will get done.
Yeah.
Good.
yeah, it's 100 from down, 125.
Any other comments or feedback? If not,
I recommend we fund it fully for $125,000.
I'll second.
all right, Linda?
Yes,
Uh,
Hey, quiet.
That's strongest.
Ted,
Oh, that's it.
Yes.
right, Joe,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Wendy? Rich?
Yes.
All right, Wendy?
Yes.
Did we lose you? Okay.
Yes,
and
I'm
myself,
still
yes.
here.
Okay,
I'm sorry, my internet apparently is very spotty.
yeah, it's a little spotty, I guess. All right, upper or middle guy. Field lighting, that's scored a 53.6, so not too far behind the Pope's Pond pedestrian bridge. Any discussion, feedback on this application? So this is, what are they looking for?
$288,820.
Yes.
With
288,000.
320,
Um,
with 40 coming from other
yeah,
sources.
I mean, I'll speak about it. I think it's a great project. It's environmentally the right thing to do. It saves both the town and the leagues money. There's a lot less light spillage, so it's better for kind of dark skies and also for the neighbors. And the lighting out there is just very outdated. It's not, there's places in the outfield where it's really not safe. So I think for a lot of reasons that it's a great project, and I'm delighted that private folks are coming up with $40,000 to support it.
I was impressed with that also. I thought that was a really important point, that there was so much money up front that gave it a real boost in my mind.
So I have a question about this one. I mean, the estimate was very exact. So, and maybe this is about all of them, is about contingency. So there was no contingency in there about additional costs or anything like that. And Kathleen, and maybe I don't know if this is a legal question or not, but if it's over expense, then whose responsibility is it?
Well, they only get the money that
They
you
get the
do.
money that you did.
And if they have some overage, it's gonna have to come from some other source. It doesn't, they don't come back to you to say, oh, sorry, we made a mistake, it's another fact.
And if they don't spend the total
amount,
amount,
they don't.
we don't spend it, and it comes back into our pot.
Got it.
I'm sure when Musco put that estimate together, there's lots of fluff in there. I've worked with them many times.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'll, this is the one application that probably, there's probably 1,000 kids play, here. So I think,
Oh, yes.
huge. It's great that there's softball, baseball, basketball,
That's what I was
a
gonna
bunch
say.
of kids.
It does touch a lot of.
It touches a lot of people in this
I would
community.
use some of your administrative funds for signage. To say that, these lights or these things are being provided with community preservation. Act funds.
Oh,
That's a
excellent.
great.
All the projects.
And every project.
So one,
Everybody should have that, but you should be using those
Yeah.
administrative funds,
Yes.
because it always comes up as a
Yeah.
question, like, what did you do? And there's a sign, there's 1,000 kids there and their parents.
I agree.
so I think, I'll show you tonight. I actually have a sign that I made, like, one that we could put up like temporary, but I think maybe a permanent one might be an idea
Yeah.
to like get it there, because I think it would be good.
Mhm.
Any other feedback on this application? If not, we should go to vote.
We have a motion.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the project for the full amount requested.
288,820.
For 288, 822.
820, I think,
Is it 820?
yeah.
Okay, on here it says 8. Do you have a second?
Second?
Okay, Linda?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes,
Rich,
Yes.
and myself, yes.
I think that's-
All right, so next one. Pepperly Playground. So Pepperly Playground it's scored around 52.3. That's right around Pope's Pond. And I believe it is for 40K for the planning study.
The scope they identified was both planning and design, so they should get construction drawings out of it, ready to go to bid.
Right, so my guess is they'll be back.
Well, they were fairly clear on that. I think we should, I support this project fully, and I think we should fully fund it, but I do think we should, I don't know if it's part of the formal agreement with them, but I think we should, encourage them, to seek, other funding for the,
Construction.
for the construction. Not eliminating us as a source potentially, but we're gonna have less money next year, and I think. I think this committee generally should like projects that are able to leverage other funds, and so. I just.
I think they are working with the friends of.
They talked about the ice house and, approaching the developer and, and that type of stuff, but I think, obviously, I think, I think there's an ability to raise private funds.
What are those funds going to?
Which
The
funds?
40, if you
The
vote
park department.
the park.
The park department.
The park department should,
not those folks.
no.
No.
But the application was, by a
Joint.
it's a joint application of private citizens, working with the parks. Department.
Correct.
All of these recreation ones, other than
Are all the
ponds, are all going to,
Started talking about, when Tom started talking about the other funding, you
Oh.
know, all that sort of stuff, it made me. Just a little more clarification that those funds are going to Parks Department and they're not to the Friends of Beverly
Right.
Park.
Yeah, no, it's going with the
Yeah.
parks.
And Pete, why his turn is different?
you know, everything except the Pope's Pond Bridge,
Oh,
because
That's
that's going to
going-
the Conservation
Correct.
Commission.
okay.
But all the rest are either the park department is the applicant or they're a co-applicant because they're park department properties.
Okay,
And so, so they will get the money,
right.
as a co-applicant.
Yeah, no, I thought you said Turner's Pond and.
No,
Turner's Park.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I just have
feedback?
one other comment, and Tom, this is to your point, 6 of the 11 projects will come back with much bigger requests. So, just so we keep this in
Yeah.
mind
Yeah.
going along.
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah. So when you say, having the letter seek other funds for construction, that might be a consistent message.
Yes, I think that's.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Or it's a general statement that, the committee appreciates outside funds.
You're gonna
In
score-
addition, you're gonna
score
score.
better. You're gonna
Yeah.
score better.
And we can mention, I think in our letter that, next year's funding is going to be a lot less, I think is gonna be the general
Right.
key. All right. Any other questions or comments? If not,
I think we voted it.
No, this
no, we didn't.
We didn't?
No.
Okay.
No. So,
Guess I'm in a hurry.
So I would make a motion to fund $40,000 for the Beverly Park. Beverly Playground.
Beverly Park Playground. You can see.
I second.
okay, Linda?
Yes,
Ted?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes,
Rich,
Yes.
and myself, yeah.
Rob, do we have like a counter or someone keeping track of how much money? that
We just, right before you walked in, so if we funded all these projects, we have about $100,000 left
Oh, really?
in the tank.
Okay.
So.
There's a nice spreadsheet.
so we can,
That's it.
Got it, okay.
we
Yeah.
can fund them if we want to.
We can fund them if we want to.
fully.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, on to Milton American Baseball. All right, what was this one here? 30, 30.
And new vendors.
So it's for $31,445.70.
Yeah.
Why is it 70 cents? I don't know.
That's the total cost, right?
Yeah.
No, I think they were funding some of it themselves, so
They
they
were.
pitched in as well. It's probably why there's
It's about 5K, I think, that they're putting.
yeah, which they probably could have asked for the whole thing, so it's kind of nice to see.
Yeah. Any comments, feedback?
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, pretty
Whatever
straightforward.
Needed,
Similar to the softball and
yeah. the
baseball
lighting.
fields, there's a lot of use. This field gets a lot of use and these are needed these were needed when my daughters were.
Agreed.
Get around to
Was
things.
this a project that scored in the 50s?
So this one, where did we break down? So it got 52.1, so they were all pretty close.
All the
So that-
recreation ones are over 50.
Except the pickleball.
Except fifty.
Yes.
Okay,
yes, well
okay.
done.
Oh, yeah, we'll get there.
So. Get a motion to.
I would move to fully fund at $31,445.70 the Milton American Baseball application for Mary C. Lane Playground improvements.
I'll second.
All right, Linda.
Yes,
Yes.
Ben,
Yes.
Don,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Wendy,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
and myself, yes. All right, moving right along, we're doing well. All right, let me go back up to C, so the next one, we're through 5. Farmers market, so that also scored 50.1. This one,
And that's also for a study.
and that is also for a study, and I think they are 125K.
yep,
Yeah.
Um,
and it's a total project cost.
and what was the total project?
That is what I-
Oh, right.
It is.
There's no.
They also did, he also included an estimate for, which would be another project down the road, it was 250 or something. Any comments or feedback on this one?
My comment is, originally, they were looking at a project that they thought would, I think if I remember correctly, prepare construction drawings too. And I don't think it'll be ready, or I don't think they can do that. What we talked about in our meeting was that there's so much going around there. There's the air rights development over the MBTA station. There's all the Milton Village new zoning and improvements that are gonna happen there. There's the whole Milton Landing. Different projects going on with the landing. And our discussion when we were reviewing these was that they should really use that budget and their energies to coordinate with all those folks. I think maybe they should put a committee together or something to get, look at the history of the site, the current condition, current and possible uses, and really concentrate on that. In looking at that myself, it seemed to me that they could do that, a study like that for maybe 20,000, and maybe they could request us and we'd have to see what they're interested in, things like that. But I think if they had $5,000 to do an early action project, if they got the money, get out there and do the tree pruning, which is one of the things that, it needs out there, and they talk about how bad condition the trees are in down there for everybody going to the farmer's market, and they could do some work on the compaction in the soils. And I think they could get a lot better project if they did it that way, but again, we'd have to talk with them before we finalize the agreement. So
Well, that's if the agreement for that, but that's going to the friends of the farmers market?
It's going to the park.
it would be the park department again, because it's their property.
Yeah, so I mean, you don't really typically have agreements with committee things. I mean, it's the town is the town.
Oh, so
So-
they would have to determine who they want to invite to the table to work
Right.
with them on that.
Yeah,
So, but
so we
To the point.
typically don't, we typically haven't done grant agreements between the communication, the CPC and the Parks Department. An internal organization. I suppose you could.
I just want to check that. Is this money going to the Parks Department and not to the Friends of Milton, the farmer market?
When you-
For the study part?
I
mean, the
think
application-
Thought it-
do that.
I thought it was going to the parks.
No.
What does it say on the application?
The application doesn't mention the Parks Department.
It says, oh, it
In
does
terms-
say Milton Farmers Market, Friends of Milton Recreation.
Right.
Okay,
I think they're
I guess-
planning to
they would do the
the
study,
study part, yeah.
and then
Yeah.
maybe since the park department,
So we would
if there
have-
was construction.
We would need to
So we
do.
would have-
Okay,
you
a
would-
grant agreement with them,
Yeah.
and we could talk about those kind of provisions or whatever.
Yep,
However, I do remember, like, we did talk about having the parks be a co-applicant. So I don't know if we,
So I don't know if they went in with it or not.
is it better to do, is it
I
better
think
that,
it's better to do it to the friends.
to the friends?
I agree.
It's gonna get lost in,
They have
process.
enough.
Yeah. And stuff, I think
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense I think it's easier to do the sort of cross organization discussion through the friends of the Milton
Okay.
Farmers Market, as Pina suggested, than it would be for the Parks Department.
yeah. that makes
So,
sense.
So just to clarify further, the Board of Park Commissioners wrote a support letter
Right,
In the support letter, they said the land does not, although the land does not fall under the care, custody, and control of the Board of Park Commissioners, our department has been tasked with and has carried out the maintenance of the park for years. So I think that's,
It's a different,
so park
Doesn't belong
commissioners
to
do
the-
not.
oh, they
control
don't
that
own it.
land.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
So,
so it'd be.
so that's another issue for
It
another.
would be the
year.
difference of the farmer's market.
Right.
Okay.
right, and then they're doing the study for it,
Yeah.
so I think that makes sense.
So what about Heverly Park?
That's,
They don't have an
They-
organization,
Yeah,
that's,
they
They
don't,
don't.
yeah,
I mean, the,
That has to be
the farmer's market has been running. for
Right.
How many
10,
years?
12 years
Yeah.
or whatever, yeah.
So
Okay.
they've got an organization, Beverly's, I asked them, they don't.
they don't, so we couldn't do.
Okay, that's a good point.
Pete, I would be hesitant to encourage a early action project. It seemed like that would be between the initial application and the final application, that we would make that suggestion to do it at this point. I mean, it's a little hard. I
Yeah.
mean, it seems like we should accept the applications as presented, the full applications.
Yeah, and let's see what
Yeah,
what
I mean, what we
happens
can
with the
do-
study, like, you know,
But we can also, I mean, rather than say, why don't you set aside $5,000 for an early action project? Why don't can we frame the agreement in terms of like, we encourage you to take this opportunity to work with the other players
To
in the
do-
area.
yeah, something like
That this is an opportunity
no, that
to
makes sense.
do that.
yeah, we don't necessarily want to come up with the.
And we don't want to
That project.
dictate that.
Yeah, we don't want to take.
Well-
All right, any other comments or feedback on this one? No,
We need a motion again?
yes,
So should we encourage them verbally? At our meeting, we encourage them to work with all the other players down there.
yeah, I think we
that's-
should, like in our
So we should
response
put that
letter.
in our
We
response
should put it in
letter.
our response letter, just like we
Yes.
did the last time, but that they work with everyone else, because there's a lot. of
There's a lot
stuff
going on down there, yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly, including another application that's right across the street.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
okay. I'll make a motion to approve that full funding, $25,000 for the farmer's market design and rehab study.
Second.
Linda,
Yes.
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 Tom,
Yes,
Yes.
Benny, Wendy,
Yes,
Rich,
Yes,
and myself, yes. All right. What's next? So Affordable Housing Trust, that scored close to 50, 49.3. I have a picture of the Milton's Poor Farm that's up here. Granted, we did have a discussion at our last meeting, and I think it was a good one, to not put strings attached to this. I think, you know, that Julie was talking about, gave this as a good example, I think, of the Milton's Poor Farm, but I would hate to put strings attached to the funding in case that takes a long time or whatever. I think there's, if everyone looks back at the initial eligibility application as well, there was 12 steps that were, there was 12 additional things that could be funded through this. So I'm in favor of funding it for the $533,000 that they asked for. But as well, that it goes to this trust and the trust uses the money for what they use it for. And how they see fit. Is there any other comments?
Well, I would just add a friendly amendment, which would have some kind of time limitation in terms of the expenditure of the monies. If it isn't spent by in 3 years or whatever is reasonable, Kathleen, maybe you have more of a sense of this, that it'd be.
Well, I mean, we can't spend the affordable housing money on anything other than affordable housing. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm getting $500,000 back and I'm gonna use it for open space or recreation, you can't.
So it's only 10%, and it's not 533.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
only-
yeah.
it's only the 103,000.
Yeah, you sort of limited anyway, but yeah, I mean, I think putting in, knowing it's so difficult.
Is it 5 years? Like,
I'd say 5.
5
so
years,
it's More
yeah.
like,
Cause I think part of the
you can-
intention of,
if they come
Right,
before
yeah,
us,
yeah,
to
yeah,
build something and, you know.
I think part of the intention of the trust is that their funds build up, because the more they build up, the more leverage they have in
Yeah.
negotiating, so if it doesn't happen the first round, they're gonna come next year for the same thing again. And, you know,
Yeah.
the intent is to build up enough that they can really have a powerful negotiating tool, you know, when it comes to
Right.
development. So I think 5 years and it can be renewable.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I'd be in favor, like 5 years. Any other comments, feedback on this one? Rich, Wendy, any comments?
No comments, thank you.
No, that makes sense. I do appreciate that they brought forward that project though to walk through it. It's a great use of it if it works.
Great. So can I get a motion?
Somebody else did this.
I move that the Affordable Housing Trust request be fully funded at $532,000.
Second.
All right, Jenny,
Yes.
go around the horn.
Yes.
Change of code.
Change it up.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Linda, yeah, so Wendy,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
and myself, yeah.
So can I, before we go to the next project, can I just raise the point Jenny made about, so, and maybe ask Kathleen, so I think, you know, the 5 years is totally reasonable and, you know, like Pete said, we could extend it if there's a project, but should we be thinking about time limitations or, some of the projects are pretty simple and should not reach any delay, but should we protect our interests in some of the other projects by having a standard clause saying we want to claw back this money if X.
Do you usually
Y,
just
Z
include that
happens?
in your grant agreements?
well, we do, but that said, we're going back to 9/10 of these projects are with town entities.
Right, so it's just.
So it's a little politically sticky, you say. I mean,
But some of these ones coming up.
But now we have 4 that aren't.
Yes, well, definitely
Right.
the ones that I've done grant agreements with outside parties, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay,
But it's, as I said, I've never had so many projects that have been internal to the Parks Department.
yeah,
I mean, most of the time, you know, we're actually doing stuff with third parties. Not with town projects, but I think that's because we've had such pent up demand. You know, for projects that, because we thought we were gonna have CPA a while ago, and we didn't, and so I think there's some pent up demand, and so I don't suspect that going forward. You know, every year you're gonna have
Right.
10 things from the park.
No,
And they-
so I guess so I agree with that, you know, I mean, let's take one of my favorite projects, the Post Pond pedestrian bridge, say, you know, they get into it and say, for whatever reason, it's not feasible, right? You know, the bridge won't fit.
whatever it is, right?
I don't know.
It just doesn't happen. They don't.
Yeah,
Yeah, it just don't happen, it doesn't, I mean, I guess the other more positive scenario is the, yeah, some angel investor comes in and says, here's the 120, you know, here's the money you need, and they don't need our money, but in either
Yeah.
way, how do we get that money back?
formalize getting the money back.
Yeah,
Well, as I said, we'd have to, you know, probably, you know, sort of have a grant agreement, I suppose, with the Parks Department. Or the Concom, in that case, it's the Concom.
yeah,
You know, just sort of, not a grant agreement so much because it's an internal transfer on the books of the town. So you probably have just some kind of a letter, award letter. That says, here you go, this is for this.
And if it's not spent in 3 years,
What we don't want them to do is spend it on something else.
right,
right, and so that, I think, yeah, and I think that's what I'm trying to do, is protect the integrity of the
Yeah.
community preservation program, and one, it gives us more money to reallocate, to a project that will happen, and two, you know, I don't wanna look back in 5 years and say, geez, you know.
Where's that bridge?
Where's that
bridge?
Where's that 125,000?
Only $511 actually happened.
out there that's not being
Yeah.
used.
So I think, yeah.
So I think that's a conversation to have with the town accountant. About whether stuff is gonna get tagged. So if we've got the CPC's account and money travels over to the Concom, does it have a sticker on it that says that's what it's for?
I think that's what most towns do, is they track it project by project, but.
It's, but you know, I think we have.
We have to have that conversation when we have a new accountant,
Yeah,
a town treasurer.
well, the town treasurer, yeah.
Yeah,
But that'd be a chat to have, to say,
Yes.
okay, you know, once July comes and the money starts to go someplace.
Right.
That we want to show where it is.
yeah,
Plus, aren't you saying if it doesn't happen, then we want some kind of agreement for the money to come back?
Yes,
Right,
yeah.
So if it's tagged
yeah.
and,
Well, if it never has left our coffers, that's an easier one, obviously, but then,
well, but to reallocate it.
Well, I mean, that, well,
but,
it's-
but,
yeah,
but yeah, we want it on that spreadsheet in future years.
Right,
Right.
it's already taken out.
Here's $150,000 saved, you know, from
Right.
previous years or whatever, and we have that for this year's funding.
well, I mean,
Yeah.
it also could be something that you do that is tied to an actual invoice. So, you know, it sits there, it's CPA money, we voted it, but it doesn't, it's not going anyplace until somebody shows up with a
Submits
bill
an invoice, yeah.
and submits an invoice, and it actually gets
That makes
paid.
sense.
So that I know, I mean,
there you
representing,
go.
you know, places, we would have a vote. And afterwards, you know, say 5 or 6 years down the line, we go back to town meeting and vote to, you know, revoke the prior vote. So that the money is back.
It's back in the.
You know, so we didn't buy that piece of property, or we didn't get that project, or whatever. You vote to revoke that authorization and the money comes back. So I think they actually doesn't leave our account until there's an invoice
That's
back.
right.
That makes sense.
That's for the public departments.
Yeah,
Private ones
private ones are, they go.
are
And-
different, but so
Well, no,
either
the
way,
same thing, we've got to submit an invoice, I would, yeah.
Well, no,
yes.
see, is some of the times, I mean, as I said, the Parks Department will have to submit an invoice and get it paid out of our bucket.
Right,
Private parties, for the most part, we say if they want 50,000, we are giving them, sometimes we give them the 50,000, depending. Other times, like for large affordable housing projects, we have a schedule, so we're doing, you know, $500,000 for pre-construction, you know, all that sort of stuff. The next slug when they get a foundation, the next slug when they get the first phase done, so you can do on larger projects, scheduled disbursements. Addressing the situation that if they never pull a permit, we're not giving them the rest of the money.
but
So,
if there's $100,000 project and with the bids and everything, it only costs 75, they shouldn't get 100, they should get 75 and the rest comes back to us.
well, that would be what we would have the grant, so that.
On those that have grant
These
agreements.
funds, yeah, so for example, like the ports, if they said, you know, we hit the lottery, we bought a ticket and we don't need all of your money, you know.
So Lynn, is that gonna happen? Yeah, okay,
Well, another way to get around this is, and we haven't discussed this in terms of process, but is to ask for reports back.
Yeah, and that's
So-
typically in a grant agreement, is
Yeah,
that there's a report.
And an
annual or
expectation, an
something.
annual report with expenditures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess in the public monies, Kathleen, if the project is done and they haven't expended the funds, all of them, you know, there's some left over. I don't know if we have to take a positive action to put them back into our reserved or undesignated reserved or whatever the name is. Or if it just wasn't spent, it comes back to us and the project's over.
well, I mean, as I said, I think they just write the check out of our account for that
Right,
expenditure. And so then, you know, at some point in the game, as I said, you looked around and they only spent, you know, 10 and we authorized 50. You'd have a vote at town meeting to pull 40 of that, you know, $40,000 back.
so we have to go to town meeting for that.
We have to go to town.
Because you have to, because you did it at town meeting, you voted
Yeah.
50.
Okay.
And they didn't spend that,
Oof.
you have to go, you go back to town meeting and say, oh,
Would that be rolled into the following year's vote?
yeah, we have a whole. kind of-
Yeah, right.
And you can, you don't.
Yes.
have to do it every year.
Yes, Steve.
Right,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, they did.
All these
Okay.
projects
We'll figure it out.
that's how many.
Yeah, so the,
This whole thing.
so the process of this, we're just this is a recommendation.
So they-
We've all voted to
They could vote these
recommend.
down.
We basically all have to go present at town meeting in
I
May.
don't- Can they vote down individual projects or do they?
No, so they
If we present it as one article, they either accept or reject the article.
They can't make any amendments to,
Right,
from they can't make amendments
what I
to it, they
understand.
can either vote it up or down.
they can't change it with a dollar amount, so we'll present it as one
It's one
article for all these projects and they either vote it up or down.
Yeah, it's not a cherry picking.
Yeah,
It's
we
not.
don't want to get into
Right.
that.
Yeah, exactly the reason.
Okay,
All right, on to the last,
the town.
third, town lockup, which scored 45.9. It was the highest out of the the historic preservation projects. So the CPA funding request is 220,000. And the total project cost is around 500,000, so it's another project that they will be phasing, for later. Any comments or feedback?
Well, I think we should take that 500,000 out of the total project cost. Cause the total project is the 290 that they're asking for.
No,
It
they're
might be
asking
a
for 220.
220. That's the total project cost. They might be back later for another project, but. You know, they put that there and then you look at it and say, oh,
Right.
they've got $300,000 of their own, but that's not
Right.
the case.
Correct,
So I think we should just say it's a $220,000 project,
correct,
being 100% funded by us
correct,
with the potential of a future project.
correct. Any comments, feedback on that?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I would just comment, similar to what we commented on several others, that we should encourage them to, for that
To
second
do other
phase,
funding sources.
to really, think about creatively other funding.
One other thing. I
Because
think
we're not
that-
gonna be able to fund
Right.
that
Yeah,
One other-
second phase in its entirety, at least.
One other thing that, I think when you were talking about like public use of this, because for. I think they do have some public use, but it would just be good for, I think, our letters to say,
Yeah.
if there's an opportunity there. To have,
And they sounded rather open to that.
yeah, and I know it's the select
The
board that
select board and.
have control over
We
it.
would say there,
Yeah.
we would want to say that in the award letter, that we would encourage them in the
Encourage,
lease-
yeah,
in the lease that they are negotiating with the yacht club
Right now.
to provide for more public access.
so. Any other,
I was just gonna make a motion that we approve the funding for the town landing in the amount of $220,000.
Second.
all right, Linda?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Wendy,
Yes,
Rich?
Yes.
All right,
we were all agreeable so far.
you got it. Next one is Forbes House, I believe. So. The Forbes Carriage House and shed. So what are they looking for?
Creating
Bundle of money,
885.
it's better than a million that they were looking for. So, any comments?
What are they looking for?
So they 288,995.
Actually, they corrected that to 288,885.
Right.
Okay, and the total project cost of the makeup that Heidi had there was like 440, I think, something like that. This is another interesting project because they're trying to get that funds elsewhere. So if that funding doesn't happen, that could take some time though to get. So however long that's gonna be, I think there's gonna be a clause in too.
Oh,
How many years?
yeah, I think that one, I'd be probably more like 3 instead of 5.
And this is to get them to a place where they can start using that for functions, right?
Yeah.
Weddings.
Yeah,
Well,
Well,
I'm not
this is-
sure.
this is short of that.
I don't think, this is only to shore up the exterior, so they're basically.
Ultimately, though, they were originally looking for $1 million to do just that, though, to make it a place.
Right,
where-
I think that the total cost to restore this is
2.5 million.
two and a half million. So redo it completely. So this is just a piece, this is basically the state, like it's in rough shape if you've
Yeah.
been there. And if you read the report, like you can stick a screwdriver through some of the rock and stuff, so I think it's really just to make sure that you kind of get it whether.
So I think it's stabilization and kind of building envelope improvements, to preserve it. I think that's really what they're at. My comment on this, and it'll be interesting, I really think that they need to come up with more money, and they listed these potential sources, but they hadn't submitted any applications yet or anything else. I wouldn't mind saying that use of our funds are contingent on them raising their share of the project. So and that way they have this approval and they can use that to go seek additional funding and things. But I don't think they should just go ahead and spend our money if they don't come up with their share of it.
Well, their point was that it would help the Mass Preservation Project Fund and Preservation Massachusetts if they knew that the CPC was.
Right, that's what I'm
It
saying.
does help.
That's what I'm saying, is we are providing seed money.
He's saying,
It's
he's saying vote for it.
Vote for it.
They don't need the cash. They need
Provide
they need
provide the
vote.
seed money for
Okay.
them to go to other funders, pick up the piece of it that they've agreed to.
Yeah, I don't think that they're gonna be able to do the project unless they get the other chunks, but.
But I wouldn't want them to take our money and upfront do a piece of it and not come up with their share of the money to do their whole scope. And they said that that's kind of, they're,
Would we do that, Kathleen, like put a limit on that?
Affordable housing projects where you say, well,
Right.
remember 18 in the funding round.
Right,
And we're not giving you the $500,000 until you actually have the closing, which means that you've already got your tax credits and all the rest of that stuff. So going to the point that you're making that, it shows that if we voted and voted by town meeting, they can walk around to historic, Massachusetts and all the rest of them and say, look, and we've got this commitment from our town for this amount of money. We don't have to actually write the check for that. And we voted it. If the money's available for
Right.
when they ever get the rest of the file.
but that's, my point is, I'd like them to get the rest of the pile before they spend the money, not going out in July and putting out a contract to spend our money and not having the rest of it in place. I think they should get
Well,
the
and
total
the
project.
only thing that I would be thinking about that, Pete, is that they were saying that it's falling down, and if there was something that we could provide as a stopgap to keep it from collapsing completely.
Yeah,
It's kind of like, well, maybe we should be doing that.
It's
I-
also a very important building for our town.
absolutely.
And I think I agree with the point you're making, Kathleen, that they need it. They
Yeah.
need it. And even if it's not the complete project that they envision, as much as we can fund as possible, I would vote to support.
Yeah.
I understand your point, but
Yeah.
I'm
I
arguing
mean,
against it.
I don't want them, if we tell them that we re-voted and it's gonna go to town meeting, if they can use that now to be approaching and putting in grant applications. But the fact that, we're gonna raise whatever they were gonna raise and, but we haven't put in any grant applications yet or anything like that. I just,
Well,
since it's a private project, for us to put that much money into a private project and not know that it's gonna, fill in the
Is
rest of the
there
pieces.
profitable at all? Is there an endowment that we know, can we ask them that? You
Well,
can't.
I was at Historic New England the other day, Houston's house, and I've been to the Forbes, they have, they have an endowment, they have, nonprofit status and all that sort of thing. I don't think they've got buckets of cash.
No,
Most of the collection went to the PBS Museum, and I think they've been trying to, house museums in general are having a hard time. People don't really find them that interesting. And so I can see why they're reaching out to sort of stabilize this, to have more engagement with the community.
Yeah.
Because right
Right.
now, they can't, the house is limited, and this would be a great space.
Yeah.
so I can definitely see why it would be great to sort of support this because of the fact that there's limits. I mean, the Eustace House, there's not all handicap accessible, and probably that's the same situation with Forbes, so, what can you do? But I'm sure they've got some.
Well, in their application, they have a list of the other funding sources and when the application is due, which I appreciated. One was due, tomorrow, 2/23. And the others are due on, March 17th. So I think I did not get that impression that they were waiting for us. And to
That would be
apply.
helpful.
Oh, yeah, certainly would be helpful
Yeah.
going to those.
So I would,
Yeah.
I would support Linda's, I don't know if you made a motion, but I would support, fully funding this. My concern about this is not them not following through on the rest of the funding and stuff like that. My concern is their answer to the public access question.
Mhm.
Yes.
Their answer, talked about weddings and, that, or whatever, basically for
Private function.
rent, private functions.
Yeah.
That wasn't the point of my question, and that was a concerning answer. I mean, they have every right to rent it out, and they should, but we want them to make this as a public resource available to, and I was disappointed partly because they have a recent track record of working very cooperatively with some great groups in town, the Milton Coalition. The Courageous Conversations group. So I just want to encourage more of that type of activity. Once it's fully renovated, this first floor meeting room sounds like a great public resource for the town. And so I think that should be in the grant agreement, but I would support fully funding the 288 they asked for.
I do know that they haven't done
It feels very private. I agree with Tom. It feels a little bit different than some of the other projects.
I think more in recent years, they seem to be reaching out to the community a lot more and, inviting groups in and doing more public outreach.
Necessity to support themselves.
Well, I'm sure part of it is to get membership and to get, people in town to support them but just, a better image in town.
Well,
And this building
like I said, every, the house museums that I'm familiar with, have all had this issue. But the fact that, okay, fine, I saw the house once,
Yeah, right.
when you don't change it. So, I'll bring my grandkids. I mean, I remember talking to the guy in Mystic Seaport, he said, oh yeah, there's a plan. We have the Seaport, you come as a kid, and then you bring your kids, and then you bring your grandkids. That's 3 visits in like 40 years. We're gonna survive that. So I think that's the reason. Is that, you're looking
The
for
interesting thing-
ways to get there.
The interesting thing about this project is, it could be a meeting room for the community, and we just don't really have one anymore.
and especially with the loss of
The
the.
Hoosic Club, we lost, and
Yeah.
so I see it as a huge potential that, and if anyone hasn't been to a barn fest, I've been to a barn fest and they have music and whatever else, and it's nice, that they put that on, so. I will say that in the buildings I've been through and walked through, and they are in bad shape, they are in really, really bad shape.
Yeah.
So any money will help, because they won't be, literally they're falling in, like, so any money is a big help.
But maybe we, suggest to them, and maybe, I don't know, if it's in the grant agreement or not, but that there be a 2-tiered fee structure for, so public agencies and nonprofits might have, different fee structure or something. So again, a public benefit.
Yeah, or even 5 or 6 times a year, whatever, come up with a number of town public, free access for like town meeting or.
Or whatever, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we get your point. We got to
Because
do
it's
that.
not this is, it's a big chunk of $290,000, it's a lot of money.
So we'll put Kathleen on figuring out how to word that. We accept your proposal.
I mean, I think it's important. I think it's a good thing
Yes.
for us as the CPC to be seen by fellow town meeting members and eventually residents in town that we're opening up access, you know,
Absolutely.
and this is not a closed shop, obviously, it's open to the public, but I think, you know, that's part of the goal here is to help town residents, discover the jewels in town. So, so if this is one of them and can be one of them, this carriage house, and I think it can be, then I think funding it with that provision in the grant agreement would be a good thing.
I think this project, as well as the town lockup, suffers from, in terms of the score, suffers from the fact that the perception is that it is private. It's not
Yes.
I
widely
agree.
accessible in terms of its score. But I know, for example, from being on the historical commission, that we've lost any number of barns. And they will go back far into the 19th century. People no longer need a barn for their car, and they can't justify finishing off the upper part for their kids. So the barn is gone and we get a 2-car garage. And there probably have been 3 barns in the last 2 years that we lost in town. That this represents a tremendous resource for understanding. And it may not appeal to everybody to understand a barn structure, but it is important.
Well, we also
So,
want a town farm, so,
yeah, there we go.
That's fine.
They're just no longer valued, but this one especially, I think, is
That's
incredible
outstanding.
importance.
Yeah.
It's
But again, it, you know, the
built in
school,
the same era as some of the town farm buildings in the, you know, 1830s, I think, or something
and,
like that.
and the interesting thing to me is that this carriage house was designed at the same time that the house was designed. So 1834, and that's in this area of the country, not widely done to have a carriage house that was designed as part of the architecture of your house design. It was still usually, you know, the horses and the cows are out in the field somewhere there, and your carriage was not as big a piece of your identity as it was perhaps in the South, or definitely in England. So to have a carriage house designed by the same architect at the same time as this house was designed, and this even predates the lockup in terms of a few years. So that makes it, the carriage house especially important. The barn came later.
So
But
the lockup folks talk about them being the 3rd oldest building in town. This is the 2nd.
I think it's maybe the 3rd oldest public building. There are several buildings that are older.
yeah,
A lot of the
the
Tucker
Swift
houses
House,
and, yeah,
the Swift Hatch Shop, for example.
yeah.
Yeah, but this, doing the house in the bar, carriage house and the house as a design on suites, for example, is very unusual. It's unusual in this part of the country.
Yeah.
And I think the barn is interesting as well. And just to keep them standing up is important to the town.
So I would make a motion to.
Can we go to the phones before we?
Yes, Rich,
Sorry, it's tough. I don't want to jump over anybody, so I'm just using
it's okay.
my raised hand. Yeah, just a couple comments. I agree with some of the most of the comments that are being raised. I think this has been said a couple times. You know, the fact is, when you're looking at historic preservation, I'm sure we're going to see a lot of these privately owned buildings because they've got to, you know, somebody's got to be paying for them, right? There's a reason why a lot of them are private. So I would support this. I do want to mention, though, when we talk about public use, I really like their website. I mean, you know who their trustees are. They're all on there. Their information's on there. You know where this place is. You know how to get in. It is open to the public. I think it's common for a building like this or historic building like this to have to pay something to get in, right? They've got to stay in, they've got to keep up the maintenance. So I think they check all those boxes for me, just because they are pretty opening, they are very open to the public.
Thank you.
Any other comments or feedback? No, if not.
So we had a motion.
Yeah, no, I lost
Second.
my page. I would make a motion to approve, Forbes out funding at the level of 288,885, is that right? With a grant agreement that emphasizes public access. And
And
that's.
and a 3-year time.
And a 3-year timeframe, okay.
I have a question about, the initial meeting we had where they were asking for bonding, and that was an issue, and I don't understand where that went, what happened to it.
So when the original eligibility application asked for $1 million, and we knew, I think, the budget that we had. So the feedback to them was that try to go for a lesser project, like the one that you see in front of us now. So any project can come before us and can ask for bonding, right? If we don't have the funds, we can go bond it, but we would need to go to town meeting, and we would need a 2/3 vote to get to bond, to bond the project.
Okay,
And so the hurdles would have been that much higher for us to go do that, especially, if, there might be a project in the future that we want to bond for, but I think as a committee, we agreed not to bond projects this. And not
First time out.
the first time out of the gate. I don't, and speaking previously to Ted, your question was like, we didn't want to put also 11 town, articles out, right? And individually go through them. So we feel like this is the best, going to town meeting with one article with 11 projects that are fully funded is gonna look pretty good, I think, going before town meeting. And we only need a majority vote with 51% vote. So I think feel pretty good enough. So that
Okay.
hopefully answers your
Yeah.
question. All right, so that one is good. I
No,
think.
just think yes for everybody's, I know.
Or was
I
there
don't think
anything
you did
motion?
roll call.
Oh, I didn't? Oh, sorry.
No.
And Jen,
Did we,
did you second?
Did you second?
Oh,
So,
Yeah.
Second.
okay, I'll go to the phones this time. Rich,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes,
Linda.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
And myself, yes. All right, last two. Spalding Garden Masonry Restoration. Any comments and feedback on this project?
Well, this one is so hard.
I have a comment. Maybe I can, you mind me to go first?
Yes.
Yeah, so just kind of what I was saying about the Forbes one, so I'm not opposed, obviously not opposed to giving funds to something that's private, because, you're gonna see that in historic preservation. The problem I have with this one is it compared it to the Forbes house. There's a website, we know who the trustees are, we know, you can go by and see the Forbes house, you can even take a tour, you can see it. The problem I have with the Spalding is they really don't have, if there is a website where, I know that it's owned by the Milton Garden Club. I've done a little research on like a half a dozen or dozen garden clubs around this area. Most, if not all that I found, you go on the garden club's website and see who the trustees are, see who the members are. Couldn't find that for Milton. I don't know who the trustees are. I don't know who the members are. It doesn't have much information on their website. On the Spalding Gardens, you can't, I think this was talked about in the meeting. You really can't find an address. You could figure it out, right? Because we know our small town. I know where this probably is, but I think it's private. You can't go on. And there's really no public, statement anywhere online that says, hey, here's how you reach out to us. Here's how you could take a tour or whatever. So for what it's worth, I have a problem with this one just because of all of what I just stated.
Yeah, I think, Rich, I think what struggles, at least for myself too, was it's public access, but I think as we went through and we also got some feedback. I would be okay funding this, however, I think with the big stipulation that. There's public access, right? There's more public access to the club, and that's my issue is that it's so private and. I just think it's a small club, they're not the Forbes Museum, so I think by providing. Community events or whatever and showcasing it, some of the positives I thought during the the last presentation was, I think it would be great if Milton Public Access TV came out and if they showed like the stable, like, the construction of the wall, I think that would be a great look for publicity for the use of this funds and also a good way to showcase for the community. It's not a lot of money, but I think that would be some of the ways that we could, get more public access for it and community piece of it.
Who owns that?
So the Milton Garden Club actually owns the
They
land.
lease it,
They own
They
it.
own it.
They own it.
Corcoran, the developer,
gave it to,
deeded it over to them, that just, just the garden.
They have a 99-year restriction of use.
But who is the Milton Garden Club? I mean, if you go on the website, you can't even find out who anybody is, who their president is, who the treasurer is, like there's no information.
I think, I agree with both. I think we should fund this, but I think we should make sure, we should ask for a fair amount, in terms of, opening this up to the public, and I think,
Well, it's not even on the map.
yeah, I think, obviously from an eligibility application, when they didn't even, tell us where it was. So it's been a little frustrating, but I would support funding this because I think it is another jewel here in Milton that, the public has a right to, appreciate, and public funding will ensure that. So I think we could, really, I'm sympathetic to a small volunteer-led group, Milton Garden Club. They are not, I was equating it to the Wakefield estate, where they have a great website and it's
Right.
very clear. You can take self-guided tours from 9 to 3 every day. And I'm not looking for that type of public access, out of a volunteer group, but I think,
It's gotta be
somebody
something.
mentioned that the other day.
sign.
Every first Saturday, or, open houses, or, it's gotta be more accessible.
Do you have
Yeah,
to walk
it's good
private
information.
property to go onto the garden?
So this is Fletcher Steel
Yeah,
Way,
yeah.
you can literally get off the road and go onto it, but it's private property, so.
But it's
They
private
have-
property that's owned by a private group that is not really public information on who that group is. That doesn't strike anybody as odd.
Well, I
Mhm.
think that it would be reasonable that we could put these kinds of contingencies
Exactly.
on into into the funding. We could just say we'd like you to have on your website, contact information for who we should call if somebody wants to have a tour of the garden. I think that's pretty
Well,
easy.
I would go further than that. I don't
Yeah.
think you should have to call somebody to get
Right.
a tour. of
I think
it.
there should be hours, or,
Yes.
they
Yeah.
open up
Yeah.
one, it doesn't have to be like a huge bar, but. Open up one day a month, or whatever it is, I think
And
we should do it.
respecting the neighbors
Right,
and
exactly.
their right to enjoy, but I do think if we're, I think there's at least some chance they'll turn down our money.
What?
If it's conditioned on
I
that.
agree.
I absolutely, but I think we should vote to
Absolutely.
give them the money with conditions. And hopefully they will accept, but I'm not 100% confident that they will accept their money.
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I
So,
was disappointed between the
But I'm
eligible.
glad they came to us. I'm really glad they
Yeah.
came to us, and I think this will be a really good project for the town.
I was disappointed that between the eligibility and the funding applications, when we specifically asked them to address issues of public access,
Yes.
they really didn't have much to say in the funding application. And, they just have to be stronger, and I don't know if we can, say funding contingent on submitting a public access plan or
Yes.
something.
Yeah, we can.
Or
Sure we
put
can.
it in the grant
Put it in the
agreement.
grant agreement.
I suggested to them at the meeting, I said, well, what if you said that you would open it up, the first Sunday of the month from May to October, from like 9 till noon. And let it, use the Milton Times to announce those openings. Just something that the public could get in and do it. It doesn't have to be overwhelming because it's a small amount of money and it's,
Yeah.
I can see volunteers trying to staff
Right.
a lot of open hours, but they, I think they've got to commit to something.
Yeah, I agree.
Definitely.
I agree.
Well, I like your suggestion about asking that, like, have them submit to the CPC a plan, a schedule.
Or a plan be included in the grant.
So maybe the grant agreement says, upon, we award this money contingent upon submission of a satisfactory public access plan, satisfactory to the CPC, public access plan.
Yeah.
So how do we, do we at this point need to figure out what a satisfactory plan is, or do we let it? Yeah.
No,
They could come up with, I think that
They make
it puts the onus on them, but it also allows them to be creative about what their capacity is, what their,
it gives us
I
something.
kind of bristle a little bit that I don't think it has to be guided access.
No.
Well, we would have to come back to this. I mean, we couldn't vote and say, give us a plan, and then our vote is good, and it doesn't matter what the plan is. We would have to see what the plan is. That's the
Yeah,
only
we
way.
have Yeah, and I think we could debate the plan with them, but I think we'd have to vote.
We would vote to recommend it with this contingency, Rich, and if they didn't come back to us with a schedule at all, then
Acceptable.
it's
plan.
not, it's a plan.
I think the question, though, if I'm not mistaken, was, do we have to sit and talk about what that contingency now is? So what would the vote be today? And what
The vote is to recommend the funding, Rich, with the, basically, with this contingency, and if they would have to come back to the committee to get it,
No, understood. Maybe I'm thinking too, and maybe Kathleen might want to help out here, but you can't just say this, you have to say, what is this? Or you're saying, we're gonna come up with a plan at a later date.
Let
We
them
want
know.
them.
We're gonna let them come up with the plan, Rich, because we don't want to put it on, like, we shouldn't make their schedule.
Yeah, so they are a corporation, they're registered with the Commonwealth. The president is Maureen Peterson, the treasurer is Kate Hayes. Ann Gatnick is vice president, Stephanie Truesdale is clerk, and director Caitlin Duvall. So they're
That's
all,
Wonderful, but I don't know how you found it, but maybe it was easy, but it's not easy on the Milton website or their
You
website.
just Google it, Rich.
Yeah, so just for what it's worth, Rob, that's not, you can't really vote that way. You can't say the vote is contingent on them coming up with a plan, because if I'm the town meeting member, which I am, I'm gonna say, so you didn't decide, you didn't work with them on the plan, you just said, come up with any plan? I mean,
no, it's the vote to town meeting is just to authorize the grant.
It's to authorize.
Terms and conditions, period. You don't.
what's the
you don't-
condition?
You don't do any details in the town meeting book.
Well, then the condition would be the grant agreement that Kathleen's gonna
Correct.
help us develop.
Okay, so there,
Correct.
that's the answer to the question that was previously raised. We would come up with that answer at a later time.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
Good.
All right, thank you.
When, though? It would have to be prior to the town meeting.
No,
No.
before they can draw funds,
Get the money.
before they can.
They
draw
won't get the
funds.
money unless they do that.
Our leverage is when town meeting votes for this.
Yeah,
That's our leverage.
That's our leverage.
Then we
They'll
have-
yeah.
We are. It's not away from cutting an $18,000 check, but we need the grant,
Right.
satisfactory grant agreement.
So not putting any date on it.
no, you don't, in the town meeting votes, they're all.
Keep it simple.
Right.
It's gotta be simple.
Just my last comment would be, and I'm probably an outlier here, so, and I'm fine with that. But I'm probably a no vote just because I feel like this should have been, this isn't a complete application. All this stuff should have been figured out prior. And to your point, one of your points earlier, we even asked and then they didn't do it. And so we're really stretching hard to give them this money, and I'm not seeing it on the other end.
I don't disagree with Rich at all, but I just look at it from a slightly different perspective. I think this is tremendous potentially public resource for the town. And this is our opportunity to create public access to it. So not funding it, really is status quo. It remains a hidden secret.
Well, they can come back in 3 months and ask for the next round of funding. It's not really, the door is not closed forever.
No, that's reasonable, that would be
But I think
It's a small amount of
contingent
money,
on,
and I
it's
think,
contingent on making it
I
public,
think
so,
we've got control of it.
yeah, and
I've got a lot of years' experience working with the garden club, because they funded several things that, you know, I designed, and they put the money in, and they do a lot of maintenance of a lot of publicly visible plantings and things like that, so, you know, maybe they should have a better website and things, but they've been active for 100 years in this town doing, you know, doing a lot of good stuff. So I think working with them is not a bad idea, but it's, the control is still ours. If they, you know, even if town meeting votes it, if we don't release the money, don't sign a grant agreement that contains this plan, you know, then they don't get it. So,
And no one has mentioned actually the fact that it is had a historic significance.
it does have
that's why it's under the historic preservation.
Yeah, no, and don't get me wrong, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, I agree with the historic. But I mean, again, I've stated it all. You can have something that's a wonderful jewel in the town, but if it's only set up that a few people can enjoy it, I don't think the public funds should be utilized. But I agree. I agree with you. There's an opportunity for us to put something in here. I'm probably more aligned with whoever said it a few minutes ago. Not sure they're going to give away all their privacy just for this short amount of money. I don't know them though.
Yeah.
Well, my concern is that it was a gift from a developer, and the restriction on the use expires in a couple of years. And so I mentioned to the applicant when she was here last, that she should be surprised if she could provide a letter from the developer saying that he doesn't have an issue with it. Because I don't want to have a situation where we, you know, give public funds and then he says that's a violation. You can't allow members of the public to go on this road and go to this park.
What's that mean, the
So
restrictions?
does that go back?
What's,
The
so,
deed says it's for the garden club for garden, you know, garden
So-
purposes.
what does that mean when those restrictions are off?
They could use it for something else.
They
But that-
develop
they have a
it? Do they sell it?
But they have a 99-year lease on it.
It's a deed. There, I looked it up last
Yeah.
time.
Is part of their application.
Could they
So
sell it?
that's-
We saw the deed in part of
It
that.
was 99 years on it though. That's what I saw.
that's what I thought.
I think that was the restriction on it, which doesn't work legally.
Not even restriction of use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a perpetual restriction, it's not approved by the state. So that was my concern about it, was that, yeah, I wanted to make sure that there wasn't gonna be some neighbor or developer who says, I don't wanna have the Great on the Watch to come to my private park.
Or have somebody have a wedding reception there with lots of people and lots of cars and lots of things.
We wouldn't be doing that.
No, but I'm suggesting that if the garden club decides that it's a way to open it up for more use.
Yeah, I don't know, I mean, that's their situation, not, what I'm worried about is the developer saying that it was meant to be used by the garden club only. And not public, although the language, I remember in the deed sort of said, well, I'm giving it to you guys for a public resource.
They did say they did a public events, like last year they had, the Garden Conservancy.
Correct.
Yeah,
Right,
right,
140 people, they said, so, and I talked to somebody after that meeting that went to that.
Yeah.
So, you know, they've had public access,
yeah,
but it's just been very, very limited
Right.
and probably limited to that one event.
All right, so
So I would make it, I would make a motion to, what's the number?
16,450.
Approve $16,450 to the Milton Garden Club for the Spalding Garden project, subject to an acceptable grant agreement with a focus on public access. I'm just gonna keep the motion simple, because
Okay,
I think
all right. Linda,
Yes.
Ed,
Be a no on this one.
yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
Rich
No.
and Wendy,
Yes,
and I'm a yes. So that passes.
I'm really interested to see what will happen on this.
All right.
On that, on
on
that,
that one, yeah.
I'm just really fascinated about
Yeah.
whether they'll accept our money.
With the restrictions, with the.
With the restriction,
yeah,
I hope they do, but.
I hope they do.
they've done a lot of work, the garden's come a long way since they've gotten it, so just volunteer work in terms of gardening out there and stuff, so I think it's a good step.
Last
Last
applicant.
one.
Last but not least, the Milton pickleball court study, what are they looking for? How much are they?
19,300.
$19,300. All right.
Down from $500,000.
All right, who wants to comment on this one?
I think they're taking this step. I think we need to sort of wipe the slate clean with the original proposal and the Cunningham. Flirtation with Cunningham and the negative letters we got from the Cunningham neighbors and stuff like that.
Andrews.
And
I mean, yeah, why am I saying Cunningham? I'm sorry, Andrews. So. Where they've ended up, I think, is where they should have been at the start, which is a study there's a strong constituency, as I see it, for pickleball. In town, in the region, in the country, but certainly in town, and we need to figure out where they might go. And what the best, and, you know, all in one location, spreading them out in different multiple locations in town. I mean, there's a number of things for a professional to look at, in terms of access, closeness to neighboring properties and all that stuff that we have talked about. So I think we should support the study. I think that would be, if there are gonna be dedicated pickleball courts in Milton, this study is a necessity. It's the way I look at it.
I would agree with that, and that this is sort of a no harm. In fact, it helps to have the data behind it from an objective, external source to do this. And with such support and growth of the sport, that this is the way to go. And it could be that the feasibility says, no, it's not gonna work, nobody wants it, and it's done. That's it, you know, that's the end. Or the Cunningham will do it, and so you don't have to worry about putting in court somewhere else. So,
Yeah, all they're gonna make is a recommendation anyways. It's not like we have, you know,
that's right.
we don't have to support it, or the town doesn't have to support it, or
Right.
the,
I mean, I appreciate the group of these folks came to us.
Yeah.
Didn't really have any clue, right? What they're doing from the eligibility to the funding, and
they're passionate.
they're passionate, but you know, I did, you know, I tried to convince them not to like potentially, you know, go after one park or propose that.
Right.
To make sure that they keep a net large to really look. I think that's what's really gonna be important if we do decide to recommend this, because, you know, we did get the opposition letters and all those things, and so I think I caution us to, you know, I think that's the reason to do the study and to figure out what, you know, where it could go. And you have this money, then a professional will actually advise, you know, where it could potentially go. And I'd like, personally, I think the Cunningham, I think there was some discussion on whether, you know, they were gonna do some there.
I think that's still Would
You
not
know.
shock me if the next round of, when we go through this again, if
Cunningham comes.
Cunningham, it would not shock me if Cunningham.
private. That's
They can do it,
private, I
so-
would imagine that's not included in this, right, where they're just looking at public space?
No, correct, and the study, however, there's a lot of rumors out there that Cunningham is themselves are looking to do pickleball courts, and that there's a rumor that they would potentially come to.
Really, that's interesting, because they closed the basketball courts at Cunningham
They
Park
did.
because the neighbors complaining.
Yeah.
People can only listen to the pickleball, rackets and balls all day long.
So,
Yeah.
This could not be, this could be, you know.
Oh, yeah, I'm just, I like to shoot basketballs up at Cunningham, what can I tell you?
my comment would be, I guess, not to be the one or few detractors again, but so I feel like I like the idea of studies like this, but I feel like this one has blinders on, and I really think that a little bit more money and the Parks Department could look at all of our parks and put a long-term plan together. I think we heard before, I think Kevin's said, or somebody had said, maybe it was Scott McKay, that years ago, they were thinking of doing that. And maybe it was because of funding that didn't move forward. I feel like to put a study looking at our parks on where you're gonna put one sport is literally just, you're looking with blinders. And so my recommendation would be, come back in a few months, the Parks Department with these groups, and put together like a real plan for our parks to look at everything. Where are we gonna put pickleball? Where's the right thing for this? And what does Andrews need, or what does Kelly need, or what does, all these different parts need? I don't like the idea of looking at it with such blinders on like this. I think it's a bad use of money.
There is an open space committee right now that has, hired a private organization, the Whartons, I believe, and they are doing a study of all the open space in town, and that's one of the things that they do.
But it's more vast, right, from what I heard. Like at our last meeting, that it wasn't going specifically into like the
The
sports.
design
and
of
everything,
the park,
design of
no.
Sports and stuff,
No.
right?
No.
But it will make recommendations that this
Right.
baseball field is fully constructed.
Or-
Yeah, it will make
Or
recommendations.
that, pickleball's up and coming, and we should look for opportunities for pickleball or whatever, that's the level of things they do. The comments I guess I have, there's been talk about pickleball around town for the last few years. The park department has painted 6 pickleball courts on basketball courts. The only thing the group doesn't like is they have to set up on the tennis courts. They don't, like having to set up their own nets and things, which is very simple to do. They're very light and things like that. They want, separate facilities that are designed specifically for that sport, with permanent nets and things like that. They're looking for 8 courts, but there are already 6 out there that the town provides, and they're willing to paint some more. There was some follow-up with Cunningham Park since our last meeting, and it seems like they're really strong wanting to do it, but it just has to be approved by the board of directors at this point. So I think they're looking at putting like 6 or 8 courts up there, but, it may or may not happen.
But then why would we spend the money on this?
Well,
What if we found out they got that? Now you've wasted money.
yeah, it's only $19,000, which isn't that much, and this was a big contingency. Big group that came in, very loud and things like that, so at least we'd give them a chance. The other part of my comment is, it is unlikely that they're gonna be able to find space in any of the existing developed parks to put pickleball. There just isn't space. So my guess is that they will have to look at some of the undeveloped parcels that the park department has control over if they're gonna find a place for pickleball.
Heavily pickleball court, it rings.
I wouldn't discount $19,000 though. $19,000 added to another set of funds is a lot of money.
Yeah,
So given the point that Rich and Pete are debating right now, could we vote this and encourage them? I mean, if we have I too have heard the Cunningham rumors and was even approached by somebody involved with them. Seeking to understand what our process looked like in that type of stuff. I mean, could we vote for it, but delay funding until after the Cunningham decision? Because they may, again, this could be another where they might voluntarily withdraw the request if, say, wave your magic wand and Cunningham's building 6 courts and, you know, there's still the Kelly painted courts and, you know, they might say, well, geez, we feel like we don't need the study.
What was the stipulation? Like, why did it go away from Cunningham? Because I know that they were talking to Cunningham, right? Mary was talking to Cunningham. And all of a sudden, then it went back to the towns, right? And that's where, I don't know what happened.
I mean, we could respond and say, you know, we understand that Cunningham is actively debating whether to build courts there. And a decision is relatively imminent. You know, maybe withdraw your application this year, and if nothing works out at Cunningham, come and do it next year.
Would the study not help the Cunningham decision?
I don't know.
You know, could they include Cunningham in the study as a,
I would
Well,
assume they
Cunningham
would.
is definitely-
Yeah, they would love Cunningham.
but
I mean, the thing I don't know about sort of, I mean, what's the value of, you know, again, as being a neighbor of the Kelly courts, it seems like some of the regular players were off season now, so it has been a little bit of, but it seems like some of them are in walking distance. You know, they live within walking distance of Kelly. Others drive definitely, but it seems to be, you know. Again, I haven't taken a survey, so I don't know where everybody, all the players live, but I'm just wondering if. You know, just like you like to shoot hoops at, kind of, you know, people go to their neighborhood court, or field or park or whatever, so.
Well, the
you know,
people that came to my door were neighbors that wanted to do it at Andrews.
Yeah, so I mean, that, you know, that's an argument for 2 at Kelly and 2 at, you know, Andrews and 4 at Cunningham or what have you. I guess that's, to your point, that's what the study would sort of get at, what we're doing.
I mean, there's one painted court at Andrews on one of the tennis courts. The park department could paint 4 courts on those 2 tennis courts. It could be 4 pickleball courts.
Yeah,
They don't play over there.
But
yeah,
if,
I wanna like time out on that.
it's not for us to solve.
No, no,
Yeah.
well, no, but and I'm glad the courts are painted at Kelly, but the tennis courts are in real demand at Kelly. Again, I'm a neighbor, I see it every day. There's a lot of use, at a lot of different hours of those courts, and sometimes the pickleball courts demand time-wise is complementary to the tennis demand, but not always. And I, as a neighbor, I walk through Kelly Field a lot in the warm months, and all, is it 7 courts or total?
7 tennis courts.
Yeah, 7 total courts, and all 7 are occupied.
For
So
tennis, yeah.
there's a tennis constituency in this town, so I think gobbling up.
Especially on.
And I think that's what I appreciate about the pickleball folks coming to us and talking about dedicated courts, because I think, yes, it was a need that they wanted, but it was respectful of our tennis players in town, who the Kelly courts are very active, not to mention they're the high school courts. The high
I
school,
would
yeah.
also add to that, and this was brought up at the first application, was the value of the social connection of people coming to play. So having 2 courts here, 2 courts there sort of defeats a little bit of the purpose of community involvement and community kind of getting together.
Which is big for them.
And the other piece is that just in terms of the lines on a tennis court, I play pickleball, so it is very confusing when you have multiple lines on a court. And it just takes me getting used to it, particularly if I get older, I can't see. It's like, oh my God, which line was that? In or out? What? And so, and then putting the nets up, it just means like you're sort of 2nd-class citizens if you're not, if it's not a dedicated kind of court to it. And I've played at the Braintree courts, where there are 8 now dedicated courts. There are 80 people that show up every day to play at those courts, and they're just a year old and growing. And, it's all organized and it's a community and they, now big social club and all this kind of stuff. So it's enormous. It's enormous.
Well, I also like the comment that it's short money and it's not going to break our budget in any respects. So it's, in my mind, it's worth doing the study. And it's worth our funding
Yeah, and that's where I
I
am as
can't-
well.
it. I can't argue against it.
I agree.
All right, so I'll make a motion to fund the, can I have the number again?
19,300
300 even,
Yeah.
even, yeah.
To the pickleball, what's it called?
Well, it's to the right.
Pickleball people.
Yeah, 'cause they don't have an organization.
They don't have a group, so it's going, it would go to Parks.
Right, to Milton Parks and Rec for the feasibility study for pickleball.
Second,
Yes.
And he,
Yes,
Yes.
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 Rich,
No,
Wendy. Wendy fell asleep,
Wendy gone?
Nope. I'm here. I didn't hear you call my name. Yes.
and myself, yes. All right,
And the last thing I would say on this is, I think it's the type of project we want to encourage more of, not the issue, not the sport, not anything like that. This was a citizen-led
yeah,
initiative, and I want to see over the years going forward, I want to see more of that. I want to see a group of citizens coming together. It's not going to be the most polished,
right,
courthouse with, it's a beautiful
right.
application, but this is what we want to see. Group of citizens in their neighborhood thinking about, I was walking Pine Tree Brook the other day and talked to two neighbors there who, are part of the Friends of Pine Tree Brook or whatever Pine Tree Brook Neighborhood Association, I guess, and, and so they're thinking about, what improvements maybe they might want to come to us eventually for Pine Tree Brook. But I think that's the type of grassroots bubble projects that we want to encourage. So I'm glad we funded it.
I agree. All right, well,
so we fully funded it.
so we fully funded 11 projects.
We're broke.
We're broke. Well, we have about 100K left, right?
100 grand.
So there's just two last points. We do need to do letters back to the applicants. So I just took this list, and I just took the three of us because we did it the last time. It was easy to do that, so, do you want to write down yours and then I'll do my four, so, yeah, so. you write down
Oaks
your-
Pond pedestrian bridge.
Right, and then, let's do what we did last time, it worked pretty well. Sure. But I don't know, maybe we can get them out next week or something.
Yeah, thank you guys for doing that.
Yeah, sure.
I need to really push us to get the warrant articles.
Yeah.
So Pete actually
We're there.
drafted it today. I said, keep it close to your sleeve because he had all 11 on there. I didn't know if we were gonna do 11, but
Because that's.
it's done pretty much.
Well, the questions about it is, and I mean, it's not for public consumption yet, but I did go through. And what I did is they're, broken up into whether you have on there.
I probably have it on my email. So,
And I made some assumptions in doing this, of course, so we get there.
So the letters would say something about pending town approval or something. isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that the committee voted to fund the
So
project
this-
pending town meeting approval in May, et cetera. Yeah, so there's two articles that we're talking about. One is to do our funding article for next year, and it'll be the same thing as we submitted this year, except for some different numbers. And we've got some projections on that, but this is how I organize, and we submitted a blank like this to the warrant committee without, names and numbers filled in for the format. And so then I went back and identified for each project how much comes out of the reserve fund and how much comes out of unrestricted funds,
Mhm.
and how much that the applicant is putting in. Like, if you look at Forbes house, it says applicant funds
I
151.
wouldn't do that in the warrant article.
Just do one fund, right?
No,
See,
you
just what we're
just
funding?
what
Just
you're funding.
The total funding, that's what I was thinking.
Just
It's just way too confusing.
It's way too confusing,
Okay.
yeah. I think we should just do five,
And I
yeah,
would-
whatever it is.
But-
Use the what's coming from,
No, you do have to do that.
oh, we have to do that?
I think so.
And what's other sources?
Yeah,
No,
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 they-
the unrestricted
the
versus.
No.
yeah, because you have.
No, this should just be one fund, right? Like, should just be
Yeah.
530, whatever it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't think we have to.
We don't need to,
It's gonna confuse town meeting.
it's gonna really confuse.
Okay, well, that makes it even easier.
no,
So
you
I-
got, and
we
you
just put the
definitely
total.
don't wanna put in other funding from other places. That's not what.
Yeah, don't, it should just be super.
You're voting the
Okay.
the article. period.
Simple.
You didn't do that, did you? I don't know, we can review it again.
Well,
Like
yeah,
other
well, I've got-
funding sources?
yeah, I've got-
Oh, yeah,
I've got
yeah, we
applicant
should,
funds, okay.
yeah, just take
So
that
we
out.
take those out and you think just one number for each one?
Yeah,
It
that
should
would
be
come
what we
to-
voted tonight.
Well, other communities have, specifically where each
I think
dollar
it's,
comes from, whether it's a reserve fund or unrestricted funds.
Unless you had just one.
it won't matter, right? Because at the end of the day,
It's all accounting.
it's all,
Yeah.
so at the end of the day, I want to go.
So maybe the treasurer's office or accountant's office.
Yes,
will need this
they will need to
information.
know it, but
Okay.
I have seen articles that do say that it's this much from the open space fund.
Yeah.
and This much from the unrestricted, so I would do that,
Oh, well, that's what
But-
people are saying not to do.
because I've seen other articles, we can take a look, I can take. a look
So,
tomorrow.
so we can do it like we have for the Affordable Housing Trust, Community Housing Reserve Fund, 103 and unrestricted that, but just get rid of anything of the applicants.
Yeah,
share.
none of the applicant stuff.
Okay. But anyway, what I did for this is
why can't
I,
we just say community housing, $533,000? What does it matter? It's coming out, it's a community housing.
But it's not, it's coming from it's.
from two different parts of our fund.
We have one account.
No, I was just broken into funds.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's one account.
It's an accounting thing that we have a requirement to spend 10% of our money on.
I don't think it
On
matters.
each of the
for
uses.
counties.
Can't you do that in the opening paragraph or something?
Yeah, that would be the way to say, it. We've met the requirement of spending 10% each year.
We could say for this one article, we've met the requirement for all three categories.
Right.
We did, and then just keep it simple. I think it's gonna be we have 11 projects as it is. If we have to go before town meeting and explain the unrestricted funding and this funding, I think it's gonna be overcomplicated. I
I
think
mean,
we
if we
should
have
just,
to do it, we have to do it, but I
Yeah,
have
we
a
look at
question
it.
whether we have to do it.
But I could definitely take out the applicants' funds and we'll have to decide whether we have to break out that. Just on that point, what I did is take the 103,000 that we've got in the reserve funds for each category and divided it equally between the projects. Rather than, one project and this, trying to make it as even. Instead, if you scroll down, Rob.
Yeah.
Keep scrolling
all the way down.
all the way down.
Oh.
It breaks out how much.
No, there you go, that's all you. need.
That's
How
all.
much has gone into community housing, how much has gone into historical preservation, how much has gone into open space
Yeah, that's all
and
you.
recreation.
You can see that.
And then we have a brief description of each of the projects, keep scrolling down,
Perfect, perfect.
just so
Yeah.
that they've got some idea and.
Well, now would you include?
Yeah,
the-
we usually just say transfer from available funds, so the amount.
Or
So
what?
the article would say to vote to raise community preservation receipts, transfer from preservation available funds, X amount of money as a grant to such and such. Is the way the article should be.
Yeah.
So this is wrong though, too.
But that's not the
This
point.
is. Wait a minute.
It's one.
So we should also not put that, we shouldn't put the total budget. We should just put in
No.
the 1663.
Don't you think that town meeting will be interested in that?
You
We
can
leverage
see
that.
Don't.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's confusing.
okay, well, this is what we submitted to the warrant committee. But that's all right, we can change the format, I guess.
We did.
This format, all this wording, the only thing I changed was dollars. The only thing that I added was where I put applicant funds. But this thing about total 11 projects recommended with the total budget of it, it was a blank and I put in
Let's
the
just put,
numbers.
we should just put if we're looking for the 1.6, whatever the total is of CPA funds, and we can leave out that,
Okay, just take out.
just take out the total.
Recommended,
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know, including
We can-
16663
yeah.
CPA.
I mean, another way to look at it is X amount of money, whatever the delta is additional fund from someone else, but I wouldn't even put it, you know,
No, no.
I wouldn't even.
No, no.
I think I just keep it real simple. It's the
I think-
1.663 million and then divide it up what we voted tonight with that.
Well, you
amount.
vote
And
them,
when-
no, you vote them by project. You
Each
don't-
project,
You don't vote.
You have to have the
take it down.
projects
You
like
have
that.
to have you have to have community preservation, open space for this, and you have to have it all broken down. You don't just say, oh, it's 1.6 as a total.
right?
No, I get that, but what I'm saying is, why can't we put this 533 instead of breaking all this out in a million things?
Well, again, but no.
We'll have to look into it.
Project.
It still
Yeah,
is,
it's for
there's
project.
one, there's two, it'd be all broken out, but instead of.
But not having a reserve fund and an unrestricted is.
Oh, yeah, no, you're just gonna vote the number you voted for, the Forbes
Yeah.
Museum, is gonna be X,
So
no,
you can do that then, Rob.
period.
Yeah,
Sure,
that's all
we'll
I'm
do
saying.
that very easily.
We're saying keep the 1.63 and then just put these, just get rid of the unrestricted, we could keep it, community housing at 533.
Yeah.
And that's it.
11 projects, let's sit down.
Then
Leave the
keep it
total,
simple.
total down the bottom is good. Yeah.
And then the total, this is good.
That's
No,
good.
that-
You can bring that.
That's
up
wrong.
above.
That's wrong, because that adds up to 2 million.
I'm
That's,
sure- I mean, the numbers will have to be right, I don't know.
so that's
Yeah,
the
just
total,
look at that.
that's the total amount of funding, so we need that needs a total of 1.6.
Right, right.
This one's right, and I don't know, maybe this probably
Yeah,
has
well,
the,
just
that one
add
has
them
the
up again.
additional. one.
That would be bad if it were total of two children way before.
Well,
It just totals the total project amount that.
What we should have is just I would add a total here and just make sure it's 1.6, whatever it is.
Right,
so
what that is the 2-point thing because it includes
that it includes
other
additional.
funds, but
Yeah.
we'll get rid of all the, any reference to that.
Right.
Okay.
But for the
we'll
most
set
part-
that amount and look at it.
Yeah, for the most part, it's here.
Does this also have to include the administrator?
Yes,
Well, it'll include administrative for next year. That's the.
So that, this is the
That's the
second one.
second article.
This is the second
And this is
article.
the same article we submitted for this year's funding.
Yeah. So
That
there'll be
says,
two articles. One is
Yeah.
for all the projects, the 11 projects, and the other articles for this.
for
fund,
next year's.
For the
funding.
next year's, portion.
And that's the same article we submitted last year.
Yeah, and
So
we're
it
gonna
changes
keep,
the
we're gonna
numbers.
keep the admin, the 5%.
It's in there.
Is it in there? Yeah, 52,300. So this one's good to go. I think the other one just.
You don't have that, we don't have 104.5 for every
Sure we
category.
do.
Yeah, we
Under
did.
reserves.
This is for the next year.
I know,
This is next year's budget.
I understand, but I thought we only had 100 total left.
We have.
No, this is
100.
next
This
year's
is just for
budget.
next year.
I know.
There'll be another 100 on top of this. We
But-
don't,
Left over
doesn't
from
matter,
this
it was
year.
already there. It's gonna be left over in the bank.
This is how they budgeted us for this year.
A new
So for next
$1
year,
million.
It's a new $1 million coming this
Okay,
year.
okay, right.
So-
Oh, I got you, okay.
That's why we have to.
Right.
Okay, so that one's okay, but the other one, we got a lot of editing to do.
Yeah,
did you add in, I can't see because it's too far away, but,
Yeah.
it's. In other examples of town meeting articles, we do have the CPC, you have the language of the article. The CPC recommended approval of this, these projects unanimously or not, you could do that if you wanted to put in the votes of the committee. And then also what the summary and intent of the project.
Well, we have a summary.
well, we have, yeah.
That's the other article.
So I think-
That's the other.
Yeah, so we have
At the
the,
end of that, it did say we
Yeah.
recommended it, and then for each article, each one,
the only thing cause I didn't even look at,
Yeah.
I know that there's
edit
one
those.
sentence there, so I don't wanna elaborate, but maybe there's 2 or 3
Sure, you
sentences.
can edit them, it's
Yeah.
just something to get.
I'm just worried that if we go to town meeting and I get a million questions on the project and there's one sentence there that says whatever it is. If we need to elaborate, but I don't wanna.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. As it is, it's whatever, 3 pages, 2 pages, it's not too bad.
Well, do you want to send that to committee members that they can scratch up if they want, different descriptions of the project and stuff? I got from
Okay.
everybody what we should do with the way they're listed, so that's fine.
I think we can just put it, Julia, can we just put this up on,
Well, then it's public, isn't it?
no, put it on our, the network so that you can just, as a Google Doc or whatever, if you wanted to make any.
Share folder.
Yeah, or we can just send it out to everybody if you really want to. I don't know if anybody.
It's just, well, if anybody wants to look at the verbiage for each of
I
the
think it's perfect.
11.
I think it's fine.
Well,
Yeah,
you said you wanted more.
Leave it as is.
No, I think I'm looking at it now, you're fine, this is all great, you don't wanna be
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
this.
simplify.
I think I would scratch out currently leased to the Milton Yacht Club, that's not necessarily true, they're negotiating that lease. It's not signed and it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
And since people have an attitude about the Milton Yacht Club, best to leave that out.
yeah. All right, well,
Okay.
we'll share it to everybody anyways. And
Yeah. in case any
if there's any other
comments.
edits, this won't be like, yeah, done.
And so we won't
Regardless.
put the contingencies in there, that we're like the
No.
3-year limit. or-
No contingent,
Everybody
that will
wants to
go
keep it as
to,
simple as
that will go to
possible.
grant agreements. Yeah.
The grant agreement happens after town?
Yeah.
Yeah.
After the town,
That's.
yeah. And then,
I think though, Rob, so we should talk a little bit about the presentation at town meeting, I think, how many of us are town meeting members?
I don't know, man.
Rob and I are, is that it? Yeah.
Rich is,
And Rich, obviously, yeah.
Me.
and Kat,
And Kevin.
is that it? Anyone else?
So I would assume Rob is planning to make a presentation, but I think he should reference the grant agreements, in his speech,
Yeah.
basically, and just so that people have a sense that,
There's
there's
some strength.
There's
some
strength.
strength attached, thank you.
Right. There's some things, or whatever. Yeah, so I think by March 15th, maybe I'll do that presentation, maybe we can review it then, or, it's not till May, so I think we have a little bit of time to do it, but I'll put it together. I mean, it's all here anyways, probably similar to this. And then.
I love that sign.
So. It could be
Oh, yeah.
any of
Another
these
sign.
signs. Yeah, so any of these signs. I think once we do get approval, we could create a sign like this, and then. Once we do get shovels in the ground or whatever, it'd be nice that applicants start putting signs out, so it looks like we have some signs.
What does it say on the bottom?
It says CPA funds at work preserving and enhancing our community, and then just as project funding from tax. Hold on, I can't see because it's like so small.
Thanks.
There you go, project funding from the citizens of the town of Milton.
And is that logo of the Milton Community Preservation Committee, where do they come from?
Oh, it's just what I've been using on the.
It's on the plan.
It's on the plan.
Yeah, it's on our plan and whatever else, and then
Yeah.
that's just the town seal.
It looks
So
good.
that, I mean, the one, I think, other feature of signs I've seen in other towns is a thank you. Which I kind of like, it's kind of non-traditional a little bit for signs like that, but I think, since this is taxpayer supported by referendum. Thank you for voting yes, basically, or, I mean.
Yeah.
there's only
We've got
so
a
many-
project funding, so thank you to the town of Milton.
We could say thank you,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you to the
Thank you
town
to
of
the citizens
Milton,
of
for the citizens or whatever.
For TPA or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
we,
good
we,
idea.
I think. We went good, borrow from signs we like in other towns. So
Yeah,
I'll say.
Maybe there's a couple of them that we can use.
yeah, that's true. But I like your idea too, like, if we funded a big project at like Guile Field, I think that's a good idea to like get a permanent type sign.
Yeah,
That I really think that would be a good money spent too.
yeah.
For certain projects.
Well, we can put on grant agreements that require them to.
Yeah.
Put signs on as part of their project, too.
Yeah,
And the only thing with this is that somebody might say, well, what's the A for in CPA, because there's no clarification. Well, really, mean, it's like, suddenly see community preservation, what, and then it doesn't match the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know. I took it as, examples from other towns have very similar stuff. It's all CPA.
Look at this as a first draft. And
Yeah, it was definitely a first step.
Noticing the detail.
All right. I think
There's the
that's
thank
it.
you.
There it
There,
is, yeah, right,
That's it.
okay.
excellent.
All
Great.
right,
All
March
right.
15th.
March 15th, yeah.
What, March 15th, the next meeting?
So I
Yeah.
move we be adjourned.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Where's he gonna be?
Thanks, everybody.
Here on March
Yeah.
15th?
Bye, Rich and Wendy.
This is our permanent residency in here.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
So this.